It is 8:30 and we can start. So I'll just turn it immediately. Thank you all for being here, and I'll turn it over to Ms. Loretta immediately.
Well, thank you all for coming out early on a Saturday morning. We have a pretty full agenda today, so we will try to get you out as quickly as possible. You know, we've got fire banquet tonight, so we do have a pretty full day, several topics. Mr. Byron is going to be joining us, but he said it would be a little after 9. He had a work event he needed to attend this morning. And then the mayor will need to leave us about 10:30 to go to the funeral for the council member from Bedford that passed away. So we will have we've tried to adjust the schedule to make sure that we can catch the mayor up on what she's going to miss. And then we have talked to Mr. Bynum about the items that he's going to miss. So we're going to start this morning jumping in with our garbage and recycle franchises that are coming up for renewal. And so we'll let Mr. Barker talk to you about that and see what input you might have on that as we begin that process. So, Mr. Barker?
Well, Loretta told me to start with something exciting. So we'll talk trash to begin with. Y'all probably remember we work on a franchise agreement, which most cities in the state do. Our agreements have always typically been 5-year agreements. We have had CWD as our recycler for 20 some odd years, and Republic Waste as our trash provider. And we last did this franchise agreement in 2013. So on March 1st of this year, so here in a couple of days, we will hit our last 12-month term. And speaking of that, we always remind you guys, in our franchise agreement, we have an annual increase in rates built into the agreement. So by contract, on March 1st of every year, we have a little increase. It actually equates out to 3%. So our current trash rate is $8.99. It will go to $9.26. Again, 3% increase effective March 1st. And then on the recycling side, it's a little tricky because the way we offer it for recycling, but the base rate for blue bags is currently $1.26. That will go to $1.30. So 4% increase March 1st. And then if you choose a cart or bin that we offer that program, you pay the base rate of currently $1.26 plus an additional $1.42 if you have a cart or bin. So that $1.42 also has that little increased rider, so it's going to go to $1.46. So wanted to remind you that it's known, we've known it for 5 years, but we always try to point it out before that goes into effect. So on our current agreement, what we would intend to do, this is what we've historically done, and this is what state law provides and allows for municipalities to do, is enter into a contract negotiations with the current franchise provider, given that we are, well, maybe I shouldn't give that. I would tell you from a staff level, we are happy with our current provider, both recycling and trash, and we would recommend to you that we would enter into negotiations with them. If we are successful, then we would bring to you a new franchise agreement. If we hit something we couldn't negotiate around, then we could go back out for an RFP to look at a wide variety of providers. So probably the first thing I would ask you is, you know what our current service levels are: twice a week trash, once a week recycling. It is a take-all trash service. If you put it out as the contract accounts for, which basically is, it can be in a bag, it can be in a trash can, it can be however you want to do it. It has to be less than 50 pounds. And if it's limbs or those kind of bulky items, they've got to be cut into no longer than 4-foot lengths and bundled with twine or string and no more than 50 pounds. But whether you put out 1 sack or 50 sacks, it's a take-all service. So that's a lot different than most municipalities have. I think that's a win for our residents. So that's our current service levels. My first question to you would be, does anybody have any desire or would like us to, in our negotiations with them, to look for some different level of service on either trash or recycling?
Well, I would love for us to explore the possibilities of doing some yard waste or landscape waste. I don't know how feasible that is, but I would just love to include that as part of your negotiation or discussion.
We absolutely ask. I can tell you, historically, when we've asked that question, CWD has a program. It's much like recycling. About the only way to do it citywide is to write that in your contract, and there becomes a charge for that. And it's kind of like on recycling or trash service. It's charged to every residential home, whether you participate or not. So, from my end, probably not my preferred way to do that. Maybe more of a little bit trying to do some community education or provide. Betsy's talked about being able to do some grant things, do different programs, to do some yard waste classes and different things, but we can absolutely talk to them about, it may have changed how they might operate.
What is that service? What
Yeah, I
do
was
you
gonna
mean
say,
by that?
what's
Well,
landscape waste?
I mean, probably half of my trash every week is trimmings from my bushes, is deadheading from my flowers, I mean, that sort of thing. And I would love to be able to see that turned into compost, or if we can't have a pickup, perhaps we can have a dumpster at City Hall, for lack of a better word, or someplace where we would take our stuff and at least dump it.
And that may be the way to look at that, Linda, is try to look at, you know what we do for Christmas tree recycling?
Yes.
I know that's a limited time of the year, but that's a service provided to the residents at Midway Park. You take your tree up, you can have it ground into mulch, and you can take home some mulch if you want to. So we may try to explore some different options like that. I know there are communities that have a yard waste, it's kind of, or I guess it's organics. There's different things that can be put into there. That's all compostable material, and they offer that. But it is, I just know that last time we talked to them, it'd be something that they would charge every household, whether you participated or not.
And that's nothing we could really team up with the school district for a class project or something like that, because you never know what people would be bringing.
Well,
Yeah.
Betsy actually has, I think she has a grant opportunity to teach a master composting class, and I think it's kind of on the thought is that it's kind of train the trainers, that you have a group of people that get trained that then can hold other classes and provide additional training. So I think she wants to focus quite a bit of effort on teaching those that are interested in how to do it, and then training folks that could hold additional classes to train more people. And then hopefully we would be getting, and we can look for other options of, where you might could take it or how you could do things like that. The thought of charging every resident when there might just be a small portion that would actually utilize the service. I think the cost that we'd originally heard, it would be pretty comparable to the fee they're already paying for recycle, so it would kind of almost be doubling that to put that charge on every resident. So I would like to continue to explore with Betsy other options of, and I know she's already exploring this composter class and trying to.
And
Years
what was it,
ago-
about 6 or 7 years ago, we did a whole number of composting classes.
Well,
And it was a small but enthusiastic group.
Yeah. But the
Lord De La Cruz who did it, so I'm with you, Mayor. It seems like it was 5 or 6 years ago. It was
way
actually,
more
it was
than
longer
that.
than that.
Yeah, way more.
Yeah, so we had kind of like our water university classes.
Yeah.
The city put on something, you could come, and then we had gotten a grant
That's right, we
and
did.
actually gave away, if you went through the classes, we gave away a small number of compost bins that you put in your backyard, do your own
Yeah, I remember
composting.
those.
But then I've also known of folks that, Britt over in Fort Worth does a deal with water harvesting, rain harvesting, where they don't give away the kits, but if you come to their class, then they've got a grant that allows residents to buy a kit at cost, basically. So I think there's some different ways to maybe do that.
And I'm not in favor of charging every resident, but perhaps if there were 4 parks at the 4 quadrants of the city that, nearest, so you could just take your stuff, if there's something at Bear Creek Park or, Bobby Eden Park or whatever, you could take your stuff if you were interested and just dump it in there.
So what I'm hearing from y'all right now is we can go ahead and kind of talk to our existing providers about the new contract. We like the service terms that we have. We're not looking at, I know one thing that they will bring up, because Republic's been fussing at me a little bit. We're one of the few cities that allows our residents to go any Saturday to the landfill.
That's what I was gonna ask.
Most cities have certain 4 Saturdays a year. It's a specific date. The way our contract is right now is a resident can take up to 10 cubic yards to the landfill on any Saturday. They are allowed 4 times per resident. So in theory, they keep track of how many times you come, but it's not a specific date that you have to come. They've had a little abuse of that at the landfill from Euless addresses. And what it kind of comes down to is you've got folks that may have a little business that they run out of their house, and so yeah, I think they've realized over time that nobody at the landfill, they may check their ID to see, yes, you're a Euless resident, but nobody's keeping track. So Republic is having to crack down on that a little bit. What I would say crack down is really just get in line with, actually enforce the terms of the contract. So she may push a little bit to me to try to go to certain days, and I will push back and say, Jerry, that's a degradation of service. So I'm happy with the 4 times per resident, but I would like to leave it at any Saturday, as long as y'all agree with that. So, and then the other thing I want to ask you about is, I think it has served us well to have negotiated at the beginning of the contract these service cost increases. Back in the day, there was a whole formula that you went into with the CPI and fuel costs, and we did all this stuff. I would propose to you that when we negotiate with them, we would kind of stick with this kind of service increase. Now, you know, whether that's 3% or 2% or 4%, I mean, that's part of negotiations. But I guess my question to you is, do you think it's worked well to have, when we enter into the franchise agreement, there is a literal matrix which each year, and everybody knows up front for 5 years going forward exactly what the charge is going to be. In my mind, there's no surprises that way. But again, that's a negotiable topic. So
I think it's a good way to go.
You might show the next slide and they can actually see those costs.
yeah, and that's kind of what I would tell you. So we're talking about all this, but this is a comparison of monthly service and rates. And what I would tell you is, if you just drop down to the average there, you can see that the average of the cities that we looked at, which was Bedford, Colleyville, Grapevine, Hurston, North Richland Hills, combined recycling and trash is an average of $12.58 a month. I'm using our fees as of March 1st, so I just told you it was going to increase, so we're using the increased fees to compare these two, and we're at $10.56. And I would tell you that there's nobody there that has more service. We have the most of it from a service level there. So I still think this has served us well. We're providing a good value there for the citizens when you look at our neighbors.
So how many days a week does Colleyville have pickup?
Oh, I gotta read my chart.
Well, it's 4 days a year, but that's like.
No, that is under bulk
I know.
pickup. And that's the 4 days a year. I wish Betsy was here because she lives in Colleyville. I think she's told me it's is it 2 days?
2 days, okay.
That is a bulk pickup, and that's where I
Thank
was
you.
talking about you, that kind of 4 days.
Is that where they're hauling it out to the curb and it piles up and
Yes.
they come through one day and pick it all up?
So for us, 2 days a week, that just means, I mean, your
If you
trash
set
is
it out
picked up
there,
2 days a
it's
week. If you
gone.
set it out, those 2 days it goes.
Yeah, because in Dallas, that gets out of hand. I mean,
Yeah.
you get piles of stuff.
And then you guys know behind the scenes, we've got a lot of other little things that I think are really good, and they only kind of come up occasionally, but if you're doing a construction project area of your house, or you had a big tree you had to cut down or whatever, Republic will come out, look at what you have, and give the resident a quote for, you know, a special pickup is what they call it. It's something that's beyond the normal. And then the resident can say, yeah, that's a good value to me, or no, I don't like it. I will tell you that that's always, people are very, very happy about it. I've used it myself during a home renovation, and the price I paid was, I mean, I couldn't have dreamed of getting rid of the stuff for that amount. So I think that's a good value to the citizens as well. Just to remind you, on our franchise agreements, by ordinance, we require 2 separate readings of a franchise agreement. No matter how you might vote, it's going to require 2 readings. And there has to be 30 days between the 2 readings. And then we have to publish the caption of the franchise agreement between each reading. And then so what we would kind of be working towards is the negotiations from now through the end of the summer. I would hope to come back at our August meeting and tell you, here's kind of where we've landed. Do you like it? Presuming that you do, we might have our first reading in the council meeting in September, the second one in November, and then again, the new rates would be effective March 1 of 2018. And for another 5 years, we'd have a franchise
So if everyone is pretty comfortable with our current service levels, we'll try to start those negotiations right away and bring back a recommendation.
I think they're both doing a good job for us.
We get very, very few complaints, and if you think about that, what was that total cost there, Kristen? A little over $10 to have a solid waste truck come by your house 2 times a week, and pay $10 a month, and then recycle come by once a week. I'm not pretty sure what else you could get for $10 a month that would have that much hands-on contact, so, and we get very, very few complaints, and when we do, they're very, very responsive. If someone's missed, they go right back out the same day and pick that up, so.
And you guys already know this, but be remiss not to remind you, both those companies are real active in the community, from everything we do with CPR, and I mean, just, you hardly will go to an event that they're not there and sponsoring and stuff, so they're a good community partner.
Okay. Then
I want to point out Ms. Getzel's exactly 8:45, so I'm on
It's
schedule.
what?
It's 8:45.
So,
It's 8:46.
let's see if we stay that way by lunchtime, so, we came to you, last year, I believe, in the process, and asked, your funding for some wayfinding signage. So we wanted to give you an update on where we are with that and show you exactly what some of those signs would look like, how they would read, and see if you're okay with that before we move forward and actually begin to have those installed. So, Mr. Barker?
That's the map that we showed you last year. This is about 38 spots that we've gone through with different sign companies and staff and identified would be kind of the total package when we're done with the wayfinding signage. And you'll also remember that at our meeting last year, we settled on 5 sites that we were intending to point out throughout the city. So again, this is not supposed to be everything in the city. This is just a couple of key important spots. And the sites we landed on were the City Hall Library, basically the City Hall campus at 201 North Hector, our Police and Courts building on Highway 10, the Family Life Center at Midway Park, the Texas Star Sports Complex, that includes the golf course and the Parks of Texas Star, and then the dog park / Leon Hogg Amphitheater up north. So then what we talked about last year was breaking that down into 2 phases because of the freeway construction. You may remember we talked about the first phase not having any signs, obviously in the construction corridor of the freeway until that gets completed. But we also talked about not putting signs that directed you across the freeway for right now. So a sign that might be sending you down 157 to City Hall and stuff that in the future may say Police and Courts and Parks of Texas Star, keep going straight on 157. We just wouldn't put that blank in until we get done with the freeway construction was kind of our thought. Before we go further, I went over these 5 things that we identified. When you get down to the nuts and bolts of how many letters can go on the sign blank and for the font size that you can read at a certain miles an hour and all that kind of good stuff, the answer is 18 is the perfect number of letters or spaces. It can be increased up to 23 by messing, and I can't remember the name of it, but the space between the letters can be slightly adjusted. And to your eye, you can't really see it, the letters look the same, but so 23 is the absolute max. Based on that, we've kind of tweaked what we're going to actually have on the sign. I want you guys to look at it and make sure you're happy. Originally, we had said, municipal complex / library. It's just too many letters. So in that case, we're looking at City Hall / library. Police and Courts, I think, is consistent with what we said. Family Life Center, we've debated a bunch because you talk about, do I need to put senior center? Do I need to put aquatic center? But at the end of the day, I think holistically, it's the Family Life Center, and those things are part of that. And again, I think the idea is to kind of help folks get to the right spot. Most of us use apps and phones to look up somewhere we've never been before. But if you're just generally directing, these signs kind of give you confidence that you're still in the right spot. So right now we're saying Family Life Center.
And it's 18 letters. It was meant to be.
It is. It's almost like we planned it. The thing that we got into, there are certain things that are just like amphitheater, you can't hardly think of an abbreviation for amphitheater that makes sense. Some things you just have to spell out. So. The Texas Star Complex, and the reason I've got the other two listed below it is depending on where you are in our plan, if you're further away, we just call it Texas Star Complex. As you get close, basically as you get on to Highway 10, then it would be parts of Texas Star or Texas Star Golf Course, because we're directing you to two different kind of entry. We're trying to acknowledge that there's two different spots. And then Dog Park and Amphitheater is really pushing it at 23, but again, we cannot think of an abbreviation for amphitheater. Well, we had one, Loretta wouldn't let me use it. We thought about doing dog and hog. We didn't know if anybody would know what that meant, so.
But it would at least drag them to Dog and Hog and verify what it was. That's fine.
So, where we're at today, y'all remember last year in the capital supplemental budget, you approved a project to do the phase 1, roughly half the signs. This is what we're recommending. It's 18 signs. You can see the 18 locations we put there. The sign on the right is kind of what it would be. It's going to look like a lot of the other city signs that you've seen around with the directional signs as far as overall style. We've gone with City of Euless down at the bottom. Our star logo at the top with the, like we do on our city entry signs. By putting City of Euless down at the bottom, you don't have to keep using the word Euless. You don't have to say Euless City Hall, Euless Family Life Center. So that kind of helps us.
Did you have a question, Mr. Tompkins?
Keep going, and we'll talk about it.
Okay. I will be happy to walk you through each of these, but the whole point is, depending on where you're at those locations, we have a separate chart that tells you kind of which way the sign faces, and so the arrows make sense, if you will, based on that. I've used just a single one as an example, 6B. So the sign's basically on the side of the road. It is, I can't remember how many feet back. The sign company tells us the perfect number of feet back from an intersection. So the idea is the sign's not at the intersection. It's back far enough that you can change lanes, make use of the sign. And that's what you'll see at these other cities when you look around. And then in this particular case, in 6B, you can see that it would have Dog Park and Amphitheater, and it's telling you to turn down, that's Bear Creek Parkway. City Hall, Library, Family Life Center is taking you straight. When you get to Main Street, there'll be a sign that would turn you for those particular ones. Also, you might remember, and I'll just go back here real quick. The intent of these programs is to not have a sign on every street corner. We're trying to look at what we consider to be some of the major thoroughfares, and it's really entry points into the city. You know, Mr. Tompkins, you live here, you don't need a sign to tell you where the dog park is. It's really folks coming or looking, so.
So let me pause you there,
Okay.
because that was my question. More people are going to come to a library than they would City Hall, so should we announce that first? Family Life Center sounds like a church to me. So outside of I'm looking at these folks that are coming into Texas Star from Texas or Oklahoma. That's not, I would hope that their tournament would say Parks at Texas Star, so that that would trigger in their mind, this is where I'm going as I've researched it. But when I look through this list, and this is where I was going to ask the question is, traffic to the library is more than traffic to City Hall.
But see, City Hall is the center core of a city. I mean, it's what you think of when you go to a city. The first thing that comes to your mind is City Hall.
And I will tell you, this is the exact internal discussions we've had.
Okay.
If you talk to Janina, she's going to tell you that people walk into that water utility billing office all day long. Mike Collins is going to tell you that everything that's ever planned or developed or constructed in the city of Euless, you got to go to the planning and engineering department to get permits. And I mean, so I agree with you. There's a lot of people going to the library. You start backing into 18 to 23 characters, and what these sign companies, every one of them we've talked to, and I think you'll see this in other communities, they really don't like you to do more than 4
Oh, no.
blanks.
No, the blanks are
You
good.
get too many to read, so you just start kind of
I'm thinking of
squeezing it down.
I'm thinking as I'm doing 40 mile an hour down the street, I look up, I see library, I keep going instead of reading City Hall / library.
But I think the overwhelming amount of people that go to the library are local people. It's not that many out-of-town people that are looking at the library.
Fair.
The Family Life Center, I would have to tell you, that's one that we were with you on.
Sounds like a church.
Another option for that would be, we were trying to figure out how to get the letters. They'd probably have to take 2 sign, like you've got Recreation Center, you've got Senior Center. So,
And aquatics park.
and aquatic park. So that's why we went back to Family Life Center. We certainly can continue to try to look at that and see, but
Like, we thought about going just recreation center, because maybe that's more holistic what happens there. But, I mean, that's not a nod to, I'm with you. What I told Loretta in her office is, unless you grew up in a Baptist church like I did, Family Life Center, I mean, I know what that means.
Oh,
Right?
that's-
That's what
that's
we always
the-
called it.
Yeah.
But that's a little
Yeah, you're right.
churchy name. And that's why I wanted to put this up there, because we're probably to the point, if you want to change it, we need
If we
to.
believe
Right.
that people aren't gonna know what that means, and we had the same discussion, is the choice is to try to figure out how to get back to recreation center, recreation/senior center. Aquatic park would have to be, we'd have to try to figure out how to list it separately. But that's was kind of, we'd have to probably abbreviate recreation and do recreation/senior center, and then try to do aquatic separately, because we could never get them all on the same blank.
19 would be rec/senior
Senior.
center.
Center. And we did think that might be a little more descriptive. I mean, that was one of our options as well. If we think rec/senior, and then we could try to figure out how to address the aquatic on maybe as we get closer, maybe that becomes aquatic park somewhere. What are y'all's thoughts?
Yeah,
We
what's the
have
group-
that same concern. It doesn't do any good if people
What's-
don't know what Family Life Center is.
What's all of our thoughts on this?
But if you're coming from a distance, aquatics would automatically be a part of the recreation. So from a distance, I think recreation center or rec center would be fine.
Rec/pool?
But once you get, then you forget the seniors and you know how,
Yeah.
Well, they're
Tessie, they
local.
get.
They're local though. They're gonna know where to go.
yeah,
Well, but you might have some seniors though that are new to the center that would be,
True.
would be helpful to find that, as folks turn 65, or I guess it's 60 for us, but, so,
I mean, do y'all think, because I think the answer is yes, but tell me if you think different. If I saw a sign that said rec/senior center, rec, I mean, that's a common abbreviation, that wouldn't confuse me.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I know where Grapevine Recreation is because that's what this sign says is rec.
oh,
center.
does it?
Well, theirs is called the rec.
Yeah,
That's
that's
what they call it. It's called the rec.
Yeah,
okay.
Like
So, and that was
separate.
ours, we wanted to make sure that the abbreviation REC would work for that, but if we did rec/senior center, we could do that, and then we'll figure out if it makes
Okay.
sense to, if we have enough room on any of the other blanks to maybe get in the aquatic park, as you.
But whatever we do like this, it should also affect how it's referred to in communication and stuff. Like,
Yes.
we ought to quit calling it the Family Life Center if that's, you know.
The other thing I was sitting there thinking to that point, Mr. Price, is we've got to go onto our website and make sure we're consistent, because I think if you're not from this community, you may be on our website researching where's Parks and Texas Star, where's Rec Center, what have you. So whatever we're calling it, communicating it on there ought to match.
So
Correct.
the sign out front says Midway Recreation Center, the side of the building says,
Family Life Center.
Family Life Center.
but at the senior center, you got senior
Senior
center.
center.
Yeah,
But I would tell you, you're right, the signs on the road say Midway Recreation Center. So if we're calling it Rec Center and you get to,
And I think that's
That
what people in the
monument sign.
community refer to it as,
Yeah.
the recreation center.
So y'all would kind of like to see us get back to calling it the separate items as we did before. I think the original thought when we were doing it is we wanted to encourage and welcome all ages of a family to come, and so that was thus the name Family Life Center. That was to try to say this is not just for seniors or not just for kids, but I think the recreation and the aquatic park and the senior center is established enough.
Front is from 1960.
Yes, it is a little
It may be
dated.
time to be updated. So
Yeah.
that's
oh, picky,
another.
picky.
I don't know that you need a sign to say aquatic park. It's so big and
Yeah,
you
it
see
kinda-
it and you
right, it
want to
kinda-
know where it is, you
And
find
the
that.
wall on the side of it,
The wall
as you
does
enter,
say
says aquatic center,
aquatic.
so, aquatic park.
Okay.
what that would leave us with is, here would be the plan. This year, work on doing these 18 signs that I talked to you about. At this point, we feel like we can do that and be slightly under the budgeted monies. In the FY18 budget, we're going to request the second half of the money. And then in 18, we would actually split the second half of the signs into two projects. We would do all of the other signs that were not on the freeway corridor itself. And then right at the end of, it's actually our FY19, but it's still calendar year 18, is when the freeway project is scheduled to be done. Then we would just roll in with phase 2B, if you will, and put those signs on the freeway. So the idea would be at the very end of 2018 / the beginning of calendar year 2019, the project would be complete. But we still are recommending that we don't get within,
No.
you know,
And that's,
1,000 feet of the freeway until they get done and settled out.
that's perfect, because we'd have new curb, new pavement, and we'd have new signage for quality of our city. So no, that's great.
And then, what I'm gonna tell you then is, I would hope that, any excess funds that we might have, we could just kind of roll, because I have convinced myself that no matter how much study and how many people we talk to and all these things, when we're all said and done and we sit back, we're gonna go, God, why did we put a sign here? So, it doesn't need to be a lot, but we probably need a little bit there that I think we're fine with, just to be able to address some of those that somehow seems obvious at the end of the day that we should put a sign there.
Will we in conjunction remove all that are kind of non-conforming existing attempts at signage right now?
Yes, because what this really goes back to me is that discussion we had last year that is really the branding piece, right? We're trying to get consistency. That's part of the design of this, to have that star and the arch like we have on our city monument signs. So one of our requests to TxDOT is, if you come down Highway 10 right now, you've got a standard TxDOT sign that says Texas Star Sports Complex. Honestly, it's located almost exactly where we'd want to put a sign like this.
Right.
What the other communities have been successful in doing is, because you're getting a permit from TxDOT to put it in their right of way, TxDOT just allows that to suffice as that sign. So we don't want to have two. So it goes back to that branding and consistency.
Thank you.
Now, for the record, I'm ahead of schedule.
You've been practicing, haven't you?
So,
Miss Getchell likes a schedule. I don't know if y'all know that.